I am so pumped about being here. I loved our last conversation, and we have been playing like email tag, trying to find the time to do it again. So I'm so excited. Yeah.
Me too. I'm so happy that today worked. Tell me, what does it mean to breathe life into a marriage?
Ooh, what a great question. Honestly, when you say that, the first thing that comes to mind is never, never lose how you felt in the beginning.
Mm,
To never let that fade. And actually, we should be falling more in love with our spouse. To breathe life into your marriage is waking up every day and intentionally doing that, making your spouse fall in love with you while simultaneously falling deeper in love with them. Yeah.
hmm I love that. It can be hard to do that though, especially if we haven't had these healthy role models of love, if we've learned
Mhm.
different patterns growing up. What
Very
have you
true.
had to unlearn so that you can create a marriage that feels good for both of you?
Oh gosh, what I've had to unlearn. Oh my goodness, that's such a great question. Um, that I can trust my spouse, that she has my best interest in mind. Yeah, that I don't have to be solely independent and solve everything by myself, you
Mhm.
know, and to trust. Yeah.
Trust is such a great buzzword these days, but
Mm,
a lot of times we're not really taught how to build trust. What does that look like? Marriage has all these great stages. You just get married. That's a huge transition. You're learning how to be with a whole other person.
mhm.
They were raised completely differently than you. They celebrate birthdays differently. They do all these things differently than you do. And then you have kids. That's a stage where you're so sleep deprived, you don't know which way is up. How do you build trust all throughout all those stages?
That's so funny because I do, this may be just being, having been married for a while, and I don't mean to step on toes of anyone listening, but I don't feel like people that are like newly married have any idea what real trust really looks like. They're like, oh, it's just like a slumber, it's just like a sleepover. It's gonna be so fun. Yeah, and then you pay taxes together, and you're like, oh. Wait a minute. Or you have a child, yeah, and you're like, please go take care of the child or whatever chaotic insanity is ensuing now, 10 years into the marriage. That's where real trust is built.
What
Uh,
tell me, what does it look like though? Like when
yeah.
I think of trust and I think of everybody that I dated when I was younger or even before my husband, I'm like, man, like I didn't know really what this entailed. I
Mm,
didn't know what it meant to trust someone to show up for you every single day, someone who's gonna
yeah.
wake up with the baby with you, someone who's gonna care
Mhm,
about your well-being, someone who's
mhm,
gonna be there for you. What does that
yeah.
trust look like in
What
different
does it really
stages, and
look
how can
like?
we strengthen it?
Yeah. What it really looks like is letting them see all the ugly parts of you and knowing that they're going to still be here tomorrow or in the next 5 minutes. Yeah, it's knowing that they love every bit of you and being okay with being vulnerable all the time and being able to share your insecurities, fears, uh, because it's not, marriage is not just a fun sleepover slumber party. And, you're going to experience the worst that life has for you together. And you have to be able to share every bit of that experience and how you feel going through those things with them. And that's trust, knowing that you can relinquish that to them and that they're going to honor that and how you feel and honor how you feel. And the way you build it is to both do that. For me as a husband, that as a man, that is maybe a stigma probably right now that a lot of men still struggle with is
Mhm.
to release how we feel. You've seen the memes. I wonder if he's thinking of someone else and the guy's rolled over and he's thinking a million other things than about anybody else because we don't want to share those things. As funny
Yeah.
as the memes can be, it's the truth. We just don't want to share what we're feeling, what we're thinking. And the way you build that trust is to do it. Try it. Just open up and share exactly how you feel. Yeah.
Tell me about what comes to mind about breathing life into your marriage and those different stages when the baby isn't letting you sleep,
Mm,
or when your kids are teenagers, or when they're
mm,
getting ready to leave the house. What does that look like?
yeah. Takes a lot of intentionality. I would encourage any spouse's husband or wife to leave your spouse love letters around the house. Um, when those moments happen, like the baby's not sleeping and it's 3 a.m., get up and not only help, but leave them something they're going to find the next night when it happens again. Being super intentional with every opportunity you have to be an encourager, a supporter, to let them know that we're in this thing together.
I really like that you're mentioning, and I just want to pause there because
Sure.
being in this together, I love the sentiment. Being a woman that has gone through pregnancy and birth, I said to my sister when she was pregnant, I said, well, before she got pregnant, but then she felt what I said when she was pregnant and she gave birth. I said, even if you have a very supportive and loving husband, I still felt extremely alone. It was my body
Mhm.
that was trashed and recovering. I was in so much pain. And yet the
Mhm.
baby's like demanding to eat from me. And then you're like, how do I breastfeed? Like it's not latching. Like, what do I do? It's so overwhelming. And you're in it together. Like he's in the room, he's giving me vitamins as I'm breastfeeding or trying to breastfeed. He's making sure we're changing my pad. He's doing the sitz bath, all the stuff that he can do,
Mhm.
but it still felt very lonely and
Mhm.
alienating for me. It didn't really feel like we were in it together because I was
Yeah.
feeling the brunt of all that pain.
Yeah.
How can husbands help or understand as their wives are transitioning to that? Like, what would you give them as an approach or advice of how to be there together, even when, because it feels unfair to the guy. Hey, I'm doing everything. I love you. I'm here with you. I'm making sure you take your vitamins. I'm feeding the baby. I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And there's still a disconnect there.
Mhm. I think the problem at the root of the disconnect is us guys, we feel like we have to fix everything.
Mm,
So like, oh, well, I have to be there to give you your vitamins because, that's what you need. That's what I can fix right now. You can't, like, you couldn't do that for yourself. Right. And it's noble that we do those things. But I think we also have to be really attuned to what our wives really want and need
mm,
in those moments, and especially in the moments where you guys do get a break, or if there's what I mean by that is when there's an opportunity where I can go, here's a gift card to the salon or the spa. I got the baby, go and be and take care of you.
mm,
It's not just being right there in the moment when you feel alone and isolated because I mean, let's face it, we're kind of handcuffed to an extent as to what we can do in those moments, but we don't have to feel like we have to fix everything. But what we can do is listen to everything
mm.
and be observant of everything and really figure out what you guys need and want from us, not just what we can fix in the moment, you know?
I
Um,
really love the idea of getting the gift card because becoming a mom, it can almost feel like your entire identity has shifted. And you're like, I don't even feel like I'm a human anymore. I just feel like the milk lady, and that's all that I can do. And sometimes I can't even do that well. So it can be really hard, especially when you've been so connected with your spouse. And then I think of having children that are teenagers. I can't even imagine all the sorts of things that are going to happen there. And then when your children leave the nest, and I'm always curious, like, how do you breathe life into your marriage through all those stages when they come with those difficulties?
mm,
Or when you had
yeah.
mentioned, writing the love letters, I think that's so romantic. I'm a very romantic person. But then I think from a practical level, it's like, bro, if the baby's sleeping, I'm sleeping. I want to do the dishes if the kitchen's done a mess and then I want to sleep. I don't want to write you a
Right.
letter.
Right. Again, I think it's got to be, how observant are we and how
Mm,
much are we not just listening with our ears, but to you guys' body language. And that's something I love that you brought up how you feel or how you felt. after giving birth because your body is not the same body it was, right? And
Yeah.
we can talk about, oh, the miracle of life, but you're still going to, we're vain people, humans are, and we're going to walk by the mirror. And that's something that husbands will miss a lot of times is what happens when your wife stops looking in the mirror?
Mm.
Have you actually taken note of that and seen that? What does that mean? And because we guys try to move on to the next thing, right? And that's not the case in that situation. And I think something we can do in that stage of life, that season, if you will, especially if you have other kids, is let's teach them, let's use that opportunity, spouses, to show them how to be a good spouse. That is such a wonderful opportunity to model what really being devoted to your spouse looks like. So if we have older kids, which in my case we did, my daughters were 11 when my son was born. And so they got to see, like, hey, we're going to fix mom breakfast and we're going to make sure the dishes and the laundry are done. And we're going to make sure that when she wakes up, that the house is immaculate. And if Shavi wakes up, we're going to go take care of him, and we're going to give her some space and some time. And when she wakes up, if she wants to just lay around the house, so be it, you know? And so that's just one easy way you can, and what are you showing your wife there? You mentioned a word to me before we set this up, loyalty.
Yeah.
Boy, that's loyalty, because you come home from work and you're tired too. But I mean, let's be honest. We didn't just birth a child, but how did that can look, you can take that context and change it and
Yeah.
have the same and flip it on its head. I came home from the hospital after being in the hospital with COVID for 13 days, and my wife had to take care of me, and
Mhm.
she was so devoted to really listening to what my fears about this were, and
Mhm.
not just for my health, but what if I was ever going to get back to
Mhm.
the state of health that I had. Lifting was and powerlifting was a big part of who I was at the time, and she would give me the time to go and work out. And she didn't, it wasn't, well, you just got out of the hospital, you should be spending time with our family. She knew what was important to me as a person, for me psychologically and physically as well. And she supported that, right? And so that goes both ways.
What I really like about that example is that she's protecting your identity. And in the
Mm,
other example, when you're like, hey, take this gift card and go, or having the kids clean up, you're protecting her identity as well.
mm,
Because
mhm,
you both have gone through something scary and it's a transition. And you're both like, will I ever be who I was, or is this just
mm.
my new reality?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that's been in my mind a lot about loyalty. I think not to have an affair, emotional or physical, is extremely easy, and not to ogle someone, I think that's extremely easy.
Mhm,
What I
mhm,
do think is a lot harder is being loyal in the way that I think about my spouse, always believing the best of him, always having like a great inner dialogue of him, always giving him the benefit of the doubt, so
mhm,
much grace, so much love. I think that kind of loyalty is harder, but I think that kind of loyalty is a lot more when I think of, become one, like in the Bible, cleave unto each other and become one. I think that's the loyalty that they're referring to. And I'd love to
mhm.
get your perspective on that. And, you've been married for a really long time. How do you guys build that?
That's so great. It's so everything you see online now is so comedic when it comes to husbands and wives, and they're always, speaking the worst of each other, and it's meant to be funny, but what narrative are we creating when we see those kinds of things? I love the word that you used, grace, because I mean, let's face it, we're not going to be our best all the time. Our spouse they're going to see the absolute worst of us, right? And to continue to practice having that mindset and that belief about them is it's almost like a confidence resume. where you, and I may be aging myself here when I say the word Rolodex, but you, like really think back to all of the good of who they are, not just what they've done for you, but all of the good in them and how they exemplify those things. It's something happened with me and my wife here recently where I literally had to put this into practice to change the selfish narrative that was wanting to take root. So we went and floated a river nearby with our daughters in our kayaks, and my daughters left their keys. We parked their vehicle at the end point and went in my vehicle with the boats at the put-in point, and they left their keys in my vehicle 15 miles apart. Okay. And so we got out of the boat and I was like, okay, girls, go and lock your vehicle and start it so you and mom can get in and I'll get everything loaded up. And they were like, yeah, well, you have our keys. No, I don't actually. And so once it dawned on me, I've got 15 miles between me and the keys. So I asked my wife, I said, I need a bottle of water and my truck keys. So I'm going to walk back to, and she said, no, you're not. I'm not letting you.
Hmm.
And in that moment, I wanted to be so angry because there were people all around and it was very embarrassing. And honestly, at first, I allowed it to be emasculating.
Hmm.
But once I got them safely back on the road 2 hours later, I might add, and headed home, I rode in my vehicle. I drove alone. And I'm so glad I did because it gave me the time to really ask myself, Carrie, what do you think of your wife in this moment? And that may have been like God tapping me and going, hey, you need to totally change the attitude you have right now before you get home. And here's what I asked myself, like, what was her intent? Like, really, what was her intent? Was her
Mhm.
intent to embarrass me? Of course not.
No.
Of course not. Why in the world would it be? So what was it? It was to protect me. She had my best interest in mind. And so she jokes about this, but I got home and I hugged her and kissed her, and she was like, who is this guy? It's- she was like, how do you turn that off? Because I thought that you would be so mad at me. And I was like, oh, I know who you are. And I know why you did that. It took me a few minutes to
Figure
allow
it out.
myself to relinquish the emotions I wanted to feel, and
Mhm.
that I guess that's a little self and social awareness there, right? And things that would trigger us for men, respect, right? But I mean, really, what was her intent? Yeah, we have to consider those
I
things.
really like that you're honing in on this.
Mm,
Because when I first hear the question, or when I first hear her say, "No, I'm not letting you,"
hmm.
and I am sick, so it's hard to speak, so just bear with my
It's
raspy
okay.
smoker voice. When I first hear her say, "No, I'm not letting you," I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like she's so sweet. I love that. She's protecting you." She's like, "You're not gonna do this trip. Don't worry about it." I'm like, "That's great." And then you're like, "She did it in public, and I found it a little emasculating." I'm like, "Oh, like that makes so much sense." And something my dad has done a lot, he has four daughters. And so a lot of times we'd bring dating stories to him and share our female perspective, and then he'd share his male perspective. And a lot of the
Very good.
times what he would say would be, I can assure you that this is not how they saw it, and you need to bring this up and share how you
Mhm,
receive this.
mhm.
And I think it's fascinating that the male and female brain works so differently. I just love that you've gotten into that habit of what was the intent and how did I receive this? And you said I wanted to let go of the initial emotions that I was feeling, which I think is so fantastic to get to a point where you're like, hey, this thing is not going to control me. I
Mhm.
really know my wife. She's amazing. She loves me. She's protecting me. I received it this way. And I know that that's not who she is and that's not how she meant it. So let me release these emotions and then go love on her and tell her like she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, we actually talked about it that night, and she had no idea that that's how that made me
Hmm.
and I didn't want to, in the initial moment, bring that up because that would only hurt her.
Mm.
That would make her feel shame or blame,
Hmm.
and so, but once it was obvious that the situation was totally hilarious, we were able to break it down and digest it more together. So yeah. And then we actually, someone from our church was there to help us. And so we took that opportunity to demonstrate to our kids, like, hey, what's the right thing to do in this situation? We need to properly show this person thanks and gratitude, for the help that they provided, but also for the chance. My wife and I were grateful for the chance to show our kids how to resolve something like that together.
And what I think is so brilliant about this example is that you are showcasing loyalty.
Mm,
Something happened that you didn't like, and you still were very thought loyal in the way that you thought about your wife and the way that you were willing to modify your thoughts and behavior so that you guys could still be good at your baseline.
mhm.
What are some patterns of behaviors from both wives and husbands that kill loyalty and desire?
Oh my gosh. I think one has got to be not being intentional with your time, like not protecting your time together. You see husbands and wives will, oh, we're going to go have dinner together, or we're going to, but it's either few and far between, or it's not scheduled. It's not necessarily intentional. What I mean by intentional is you look ahead, look at a calendar and look ahead and plan and protect that time,
Mm.
and schedule it the same way you would schedule something for work. It's got to be more sacred, your time together. That in itself is an expression of loyalty. And if someone or life or children try to become an obstacle to that, you don't allow it. You don't allow it to become an obstacle. That is going to happen. That protected whatever it is going to happen, and we're going to follow through with that. I think that is a big step that couples can take. Because I mean, think back to when when you were dating your spouse, right? Neither hell nor high water was canceling a date. It is not happening, right?
I
Like,
remember one time I got really sick, and we weren't dating at this point, we were just friends. We had just met a few weeks prior, and he was supposed to come spend some time with me. And I messaged him and I was like, "Hey, I'm actually feeling sick. I don't want to get you sick. I think I'm just gonna rest." And then he called me and then told me like, "Hey, what do you think if I just come and I help you feel better? I'll make some food, bring some vaporub. This is very big in Spanish culture. This is the magical thing that will heal you in Spanish culture." He's like, "We'll put some vaporub on your feet, put on my very special fuzzy socks, and everything will be good." I was like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay." And then later he told me that he felt if he didn't come, it would drive a wedge between us, that either I would think he didn't care or that I would get so busy that I would just like skip that chance to be with him and then get so busy during my week that I just wouldn't see him for a few weeks. And he's like, I just felt like it could derail everything between us, or I could just go and keep things on track. And there's been so many times during our courtship where he told me that he specifically felt if he didn't do something or if he did something, that it would ruin our chances. And so he always
mm,
worked so hard to just be on the path to give us our best chance if we were ever to be something. And
yeah.
I really admire that because for me, that's also a sense of loyalty that he did it before we were even anything and that he continues to do that now with our marriage.
Mhm. Yeah, when you say that, it reminds me that who we are is not necessarily what we do, it's also what we tolerate.
Mm.
And if we allow anything to be a wedge between us and our spouse, even if it's our children, then it compromises the decision next time. It becomes easier to dismiss our time together,
Hmm.
how sacred that has to be. Yeah. So I love that you brought that up.
So you would say that spending time together that's not intentional, that's something that would kill desire and loyalty. What would be another thing?
Mm. I think it's got to be how we support, and it makes me laugh just thinking about it, how we support our spouse, even in times where they're not at their best or where they're having a bad day. It's our job as their protector, as the person that is going to love them when the rest of the world doesn't. We never get a day off from that, you know? And so it's easy to get excited about a getaway or protected time, with your husband or wife. It's easy to be excited about that and fall in love then. How how easy is it to fall in love with them when they come home and they've had a bad day, you know? And anything and everything is a trigger for them emotionally, right? And so my wife and I have a great way to solve this, okay? When either one of us have had a bad day at work, here's how we frame it when we attempt to talk to the other one. And you can always tell, right, when your spouse has had a bad day at work. So
Yeah.
here's the question we lead in with that for us, this completely changes everything. Tell me about the dumbest thing that happened at work today. Right? So we've totally reframed what we're talking about
Mhm.
to find the humor in it. You know, as bad as the day at work might have been, what was the dumbest thing that happened at work today? And more often than not, I know that sounds silly, but more often than not, the thing when we reframe it, the thing that caused us the most frustration, maybe even sadness at work, is the thing that we can then look on and go, wow, yeah, that was really dumb. Like just the whole occurrence was dumb, but the fact that I've allowed it to come home with me, that's my fault. I've got to leave that outside the door, you know? And so, yeah, I would say finding and being intentional about the way you love your spouse, even on the bad days. Yeah.
I think that's so beautiful and so profound. I hadn't thought of it. We're supposed to be the person that loves them when the world doesn't. We're supposed to be their safe spot. I
Mhm.
think one of my favorite things is my husband called me last week and he's like, "Babe, I just need to talk to you and rant about this person, like this potential client that was like super rude to him." He's like, "Usually people are like so kind, but he's like, this guy was like so rude and aggressive." I'm like, "I'm sorry, honey." And I just like I love that I get to be the person that he rants to and that he
Mhm.
gets to be the person that I rant to. And I always
Mhm.
tell him like this is confidential. He's always like, "Who am I going to tell?" I'm like, "I'm about to tell you something confidential." Have him sign
Totally
an
off the
NDA
books.
about my thoughts, my not nice thoughts. But
Oh,
I
that's
think that that's beautiful. And I think, yeah, you're right. Like, if you can't have that, like, if you're married to someone where you feel like you can't be flawed and you can't be human, like, who's not going to love you, like, when you're stinky, when
Mhm.
you're
Mhm.
gross, when you're farting, like, when you haven't done the greatest thing. I think it's beautiful to have someone where they're your rock and they're your foundation, even when times are really tough. Because
Mhm.
I think parenthood is like so beautiful, but it's definitely tough. Like you're especially throwing in sleep deprivation and throwing on these beautiful human beings that you're taking care of. And you need a partner who's willing to be 100% in with you, committed to
Mhm.
you and committed to the child and committed to keeping things really well
Mhm.
for the next generation so that we're not hurting these kids or the next generation by teaching them things that aren't helpful. Like the other day, I was like, my son threw a cracker, and I was like, why are you throwing that? I was like, don't you know that those cost money? Those are like $5 a bag, which is ridiculous for like 20 crackers. These baby people are like insane. But anyways, and then I said, no, no, no. I was like, nope, that's wrong. Let's rewind. Don't throw that, please. That's wasteful. And I kept it at that because like he doesn't need to worry about the finances. Like that's a
Mhm.
scarcity
Mhm.
mindset. And my
Mhm.
husband said, "Good catch, babe. I love that." And I was like, "Thank you." And so I love I love being in it where we both talked about like how we want to raise our kids and how we don't want to
Mhm.
have the scarcity mindset. We want to be abundant. We want all the stuff that we've talked about. And then anytime that we don't meet up to that, that we can self-correct and that we can support each other. when
Hmm.
we're self-correcting. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's extremely important. Something that comes to mind is when God designed marriage, what do you think that he wanted us to experience?
Oh, goodness. There's so much reference in the Bible to Jesus looking at us as a bride,
Hmm.
you know, and I think is that is the picture of marriage. You know, this person that would literally give up their life for those that they love more than life itself. And that I think that's the heart posture we are to take when we do take our vows. You know, I mean, that is really what we are doing, you know, in sickness and in health. Well, it's no, it's in anything. It's in anything and everything. Is that person's needs, wants, desires? Yes, they do need to come before ours. They're giving you their life, but the only way for that to work is for it to be reciprocal. You know, and so I love that picture in the Bible that's offered to us because I think that is what marriage is supposed to be like. Like if my wife, whatever she needs from me, that should be, I should be the one to give it. Should be the one to meet the needs that she can't for herself and her protector and to protect her of her emotions and of her time and of her respect and yeah.
What is it that you think that men crave out of marriage and that women crave out of marriage? How's it different and how's it the same?
I think men at every stage of their life crave respect and not some kind of um, egotistical or macho, according to your culture, that could differ, but at the heart of how we're wired, if you will, I think it's respect. Um, and that could be, that can look a lot of different ways, but in the context of marriage, I think that's um, just knowing that our wife chooses us, you know, even when we're in our 40s and and not super fit, that they still choose us, just um, hearing your wife as a man, hearing your wife say something like, you're handsome or uh, look at my hot date, or even just you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Things like that. They make as a guy that makes you feel respected. It really does. And I think at the heart of men, that's what we crave, even from our children as
Yeah.
well. And again, not like, oh, I'm the king of my castle. No, but respect in the terms of everyone in my home knows that I'm going to give them my best, and they're sure of that. That in itself, the trust that they would have in me to be the biblical leader of my home, that's respect.
Hmm.
Uh, Women, I think, you're going to have to correct me here if I'm wrong, but um, at any stage, I think women crave belonging, um, and from their husbands, for us to be selfless, and to make them feel like the queen that they should. And I know that that sounds a little cliche, if you would, but that in itself gives belonging. Like there's this old saying that I don't care much for, but it still exists all the same. Happy wife, happy life, right? But um, I, I actually was the best man for a wedding, and the bride's maid of honor said that, and I came behind her and I said, "Guys, look at each other right now. Do you make each other happy? Then that's perfect." You know, if she's happy and you're not, that's not perfect, but do you make each other happy? And so I think women crave a sense of belonging in all their relationships, but when it comes to, and I know I'm going a long way around saying this, but for men, it's knowing that you choose her every day. You didn't just choose her when she was young and flirtatious. You choose her when she wakes up, she hasn't brushed her teeth or put any makeup on, and you still choose her, and she's still the matriarch of your family. And that no one in the house or that comes in the house is going to disrespect her.
Mm,
And that those are that's it. There's no getting over that. That's like the ground rules for the home, right? And so, but that gives my wife a sense of belonging. She knows how important she is to our family, and she doesn't ever have to question that.
I think that's really beautiful, and I haven't heard that before. It does make sense to me that she feels that she belongs to you. She belongs in the home. She belongs in the marriage. She belongs as the mother of your kids. Something that I have noticed a pattern is women mostly want to be cherished. They
Hmm.
want to know, just like you described, I'm still the person he cherishes. I still belong to him. He still belongs to me, even when I haven't brushed my teeth, even when I don't have makeup on, even when I'm acting a little bit crazy. And I would argue that men want to feel like they belong to their spouse too. And I'm
Hmm.
curious to know, like, what's the difference between respect and love from a male's perspective?
Hmm.
And where this comes from is I had a conversation with my husband, I think yesterday. I was like, we were talking on the phone because he likes to call me after work. And I was like, babe, I just love you so much. And he was like, really? Why? I was like, I just do. I love you so much. And I feel like I love you so much more than I ever did before. And I was like, and I love that, but sometimes it also scares me a little bit. I was like, do you feel the same way? I'm always like wondering, I'm like, does he feel the same way? I'm like, I just love him so much. Like, it's for someone who was scared of marriage and someone who was scared of like locking it down for a number of reasons. It's such an interesting experience for me to feel, oh man, like I love this man so much. Like he's the father of my baby. Like I love him. He's amazing. This is a person I want to go through life with. And I find it very different and odd. And then I found myself curious, like, is this what he feels? Like, what do other people feel? And he's like, yes, I feel that all the time. He's like, my biggest fear is that you're gonna die. And I was like, okay.
Thanks for
I was like,
sharing.
we're on the same page. That's my biggest fear too.
Same, yeah.
But something that he has expressed to me, not in the same words, but like what you described. And to me, it sounds like belonging. Like he knows he belongs to me. Like he knows I
Mm,
adore him. He knows he belongs in our home. He knows that I value his opinion so much. And I
mhm,
can see how that sounds like respect too. And I'm curious, from a male perspective, what's the difference between respect and love? Because I hear guys all
mhm,
the time, like, I want to feel respected. What
mhm.
is what does that look like? I would love
Yeah.
to learn that.
I think at the root of it, and no man will probably say this out loud. It doesn't bother me to say that, but and maybe many have not gotten to the root of this, but at the heart of us, every man at some point has a feeling of inadequacy.
Mm,
They really do because we're supposed, we're supposed to be the protectors of our home and the providers and all these things that we tell ourselves that the world helps us tell ourselves that we're supposed to be. And the minute we can't fulfill one of those things to societal standards, traditional standards, cultural standards, then we conjure up this feeling of inadequacy.
mm,
And I think the difference, to answer your question, between love and respect is when our spouse makes us feel loved, then that feeling doesn't exist because we know we're enough for them. Not just enough, but who they want to go through life with. Respect can be, maybe respect was not the appropriate word, but respect can be given out of fear. Love can't be given out of fear.
mm,
Right. Respect could, in terrible negative context, be given out of fear, but not love. And so I think that is the biggest difference is that love can help us relinquish, turn loose of that feeling of inadequacy, because it's every guy's fear. It's every guy's fear that they'll lose their spouse or their home or their children or their everything, and they'll be alone, you know? And that's not, I mean, biblically, that is not what our identity is supposed to be rooted in, but it is a fear that creeps in. So when our spouse makes us feel loved, then it can dispel that. Mhm.
I think that's so fascinating because you're linking it to the way that men have been socialized. And
Mm,
I do hear I don't feel good enough, or the fear of not being good enough for their wives, a common theme. And I'm wondering if respect, because I hear respect so much, like I want to be respected. I hear that so much. And women, I hear like a lot of like, I want to feel cherished. Like I want to know like they really pick me. And I'm wondering if because the way we socialize men, like we don't lean too much into their emotions and like too much in their thoughts, and so men are more like quiet than women. I wonder if the respect comes into play of I want to feel like someone cares about my opinion. I want to feel like someone trusts the way that I think, someone trusts my advice. I want to feel like I actually matter. My feelings matter, my thoughts matter, my smarts matter, because I think sometimes we don't do enough um emotionally connecting with men and
mm,
teaching them how to connect to their own emotions, but also treating them like they have emotions and intellect. You know, like it's very common for girls, we're like, yes, you're so smart and beautiful, and you're feeling this and you're feeling that. And for men, we're not giving them that. We're just saying, like, yes, just go lift that heavy thing and
mm,
don't break anything today and just be good and just be quiet, please. I wonder if maybe that could come into play.
for sure. Yeah, I absolutely think it can. It's suck it up mentality, and which, in itself, being mentally tough is a great thing. It's something that everyone needs to possess, a degree of mental toughness, but mental toughness is not ignoring how you feel about things because you're still very much going to feel emotions. It's just the matter of whether you talk about them or not. I think that's probably why a lot of men don't, is out of fear of losing respect, you know, that we're not supposed to share our feelings or talk about them out loud, etc. Yeah, that's a great point.
Man, but I love just how you explained that thought process that you had with the keys and how you were
Mm,
able to understand, have that self-awareness of what you were feeling, and then how she meant that. And then
mm,
how you were so loyal in that, and you were able to modify your thoughts and your behavior so that you guys could be very connected again. I'm curious when people don't have this great model in their life to learn healthy love. You know, we didn't really talk about this 20, 30 years ago. This wasn't a big
mm.
thing. And in Hollywood, we romanticize people falling in love, breaking trust, betrayal, abandonment, cheating, and then coming back together, and everything's so great.
That's true.
I'm very against it.
That's
But
every
that's what we're
rom-com ever made.
seriously, it's the worst. What would you say? Like, what's something that these people that we can do to regulate ourselves, and then one thing that we can do to co-regulate with our spouse?
Mm. One thing we can do to regulate with ourselves is, yeah, I heard this recently, and it's so simple. Ask what before why.
Hmm.
Why can attach too many emotions. Um, and so here's what I mean by that. I had to ask myself, what did my wife mean when she told me, no, I'm not letting you? If I would have leaned too far into why did she tell me that? Oh, well, because she wanted to be in charge, or, she, whatever. She wanted to do things her way, or I could have gone down so many rabbit holes. Oh, what did she mean? That made me ask more questions. What was the point of her not giving me the keys? What could have happened if she would have given them to me? You understand what I mean? And so I think it's the way we can self-regulate is really first, it's the mindset we go into that process with. Like, does my spouse mean me harm? I mean, really, does my spouse mean me harm? And then begin to ask ourselves questions and what before why. What did my spouse mean when they said this? What was their true intent when they said this or did this? So many things are just misconstrued or have their root in something else, in a real problem that a marriage is facing.
Mm.
You know, I think something that we can do together to co-regulate is to be honest. And here's what I mean. I told my wife to start the conversation. I know that you were just trying to protect me. And immediately I validated everything that was true, not
Mm.
what I felt, but everything that was true. I validated it. So
Mm.
now she's going to be so much more open with me about how she felt, and she's going to be open to receive how I felt. But we'll get to feelings in a second. Let's talk about the truth first, right? And so I think that is a great way to co-regulate is to first acknowledge what's true. Yeah. And to
I
validate.
think, no, sorry, please go on.
Oh, I was going to say to validate what we know to be true about them.
What's brilliant about these examples is that you are taking yourself out of fight, flight, freeze, or
Mhm.
fawn with your question, what did she mean? And when you speak to her with your statement, I know you were just trying to protect me, you're immediately taking her out of fight, freeze, fawn, or whatever the other thing is, the 4R, because we cannot have these great discussions with dysregulated nervous systems.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
bringing that peace into your own self so that you're not like, oh my gosh, like this was actually something horrible and I have to protect myself, I have to survive. You're calm, and then you're able to bring that regulation to her so that she can be calm and she's no longer going to feel defensive because she's no longer in a fight. She's talking with someone who understands her, and she's going to be more receptive to hearing, oh, this is how he experienced it.
Mhm.
I think that's so brilliant. So, my last question for you today is what would be one small but powerful step that people can take to start breathing life into their marriage today?
Oh gosh. The first thing that jumped into my mind and heart, honestly, was pray together. But, um, for those that are listening, that may not be your flavor, I guess you could say. Or, if you're not, if your faith isn't something you lean into, uh, I would say get curious, get real curious. You know, um, and that's all prayer is. When you pray with your spouse, it's it's really letting go of any control you have and asking for the best for both of you. Um, and I think when we get curious about them, it's the same thing. It's us seeking to understand them more and seeking to know really what they need from us and what they want. This is a question my wife and I have asked each other recently because the season of life that we're in right now has is beginning to transition and we can sense it. Our daughters are going to start college next year. And so we have just our son at home and we've realized we have this big house and we don't need this anymore. So like what is next? And so
Mhm.
I've begun to ask her questions like, hey, in this new season of life, what does the perfect day look like for you? Like everything from the time you open your eyes until you go to bed again. What does the perfect day look like for you? What does fulfilling work in that day look like for you? What
Mhm.
gives you meaning in this new season? And so, um, yeah, and that's curiosity, right? And somewhere in there, I'll have a role to play, regardless of how minuscule it might be. Right. And that will tell me how I can love her better as we go forward. Yeah. So I would say get curious. And if you are a couple who leans in your faith, pray with one another. And what better way to speak the vision of your marriage into existence than to pray it into existence?